everyone, it's Olivia again. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about old plot points in Masquerade. I did not even make an outline for this, so Lord help me. But I remember some of the most interesting ones. I think they're hard to forget. So I'm going to jump in and tell you some of my favorites, as well as some of the ones that were a teensy bit questionable. Let's get started. First of all, I have mentioned this in a short before, but one of my most insane switches, cut things was something that didn't even make it into the first draft, but something I will always frickin' remember. And that is, Persephone and Nathan were originally supposed to get into a relationship. That is right. They were supposed to be romantic interests. And I will never be doing that again. But, yeah, they were supposed to be romantic interests. They were supposed to, be in love, have a relationship. And Clover was supposed to die. But I changed this right before I did it. I remember I was fully expecting to go into the first draft of Masquerade and do this plot line. Thing is, I wrote chapter 5 of my first draft, and I kind of looked at it, and I was like, there's no way I'm doing this, because I was writing stuff on Nathan and Clover's relationship, and I thought it was the cutest thing. So I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. I can't do this to them. So, that didn't happen. And honestly, the series would have changed completely if I did that. So I'm kind of glad I didn't do that, and the series turned out the way it did. So there's that. I'm very happy about that. So yeah, that's plot point number 1. It's very short, I know, but I have some others that I'll do a little bit more explaining on, but just because I've already mentioned this one, not as much explanation. All right, second plot point. I actually already said all of this, but the thing was, my camera was paused and I didn't realize. So we're back, and I'm going to tell you this plot point again, and here we go. So first of all, Trinity was originally kidnapped. She was originally kidnapped. The kidnapped point of view, right? And the thing is, Persephone brainwashed Trinity into believing all her friends were horrible, Pertha was a lie, she was wrong for killing Paul, all this stuff, and then Trinity essentially became Persephone's henchman because of this brainwashing, and she became, literally, her partner in crime. Was it the only time we were ever going to get a Trinity x Persephone redemption? Yeah, but that kind of was the most insane plot point ever, because Trinity was also, trying to kill her fiancé, because she thought that her fiancé was horrible to her and all this stuff. So, it was for good reason that it was cut. It was just insanity, okay? And then also, she would have, these things where she would actually try to kill, her friends numerous times, and they somehow still forgave her after that, which I'm like, okay, she was brainwashed, but how are you forgiving your friend? That's my question. I would not be forgiving my friend. I'm sorry, I would not. So if any of you are actually brainwashed, not forgiving you. Any of my friends, not forgiving you. But yeah, but then, Atlas also, she would, question it still. She wouldn't, be full-on blind obedient. She would be like, is this right? So, yeah, Trinity was originally brainwashed to be Persephone's henchman, and we actually saw them have a good relationship for once. And then that leads me into other things, other plot points, which included the backtrack. Now, if you read book 1, you know what the backtrack is. You know it. You know what it is. And Persephone essentially rebuilt it in the first 2 drafts of book 2 of Masquerade. She rebuilt the frickin' backtrack. And and she used that to expedite the brainwashing process on Trinity. So she put Trinity in the backtrack and used it to help brainwash her faster. Yes, I know that was a weird plot point. It was cut completely from the published draft, but it was cut midway through writing this draft. I was on chapter 23 when I realized, wait, but I could do this though. And Trinity was not brainwashed in this draft. Don't worry. No brainwashing involved. And no Trinity henchmen, which I guess we could be happy or sad about. Whatever you want to think. So there's that. Next plot point. Yeah, so that's the backtrack plot point. And Trinity would also do other things in this brainwashed state. Like, she kidnapped Nathan, Clover, and Harold with Persephone's help. And then she tortured Nathan, Clover, and Harold. And then Nathan, Clover, and Harold were rescued. Yeah, that was an insane plot point. That was also cut. And this was all, like, in the last part of the book. So, don't know what that was about. Next cut thing from Masquerade. This one actually pains me. I'm still so sad that I had to cut this, but it made the story better. And yeah, so we have to count our blessings here. So I cut 2 characters out from the entire rest of the series that were introduced in Masquerade. There were originally 2 more characters in Masquerade that were to be introduced. There was a man named Lawrence, who was 25, and also another one of Persephone's employees. And there was Sonia, his younger sister, who was, I think, 17. So, they were both French immigrants. Yep. They were both French immigrants. They spoke fluent French. We had the sarcastic French comments, which I was so happy about that. And, Lawrence was very sweet and kind, and he was also, like, kind of like, you know, let's just take a step back for a second. And he ended up not working for Persephone anymore because he realized he was never a big fan of what Persephone was doing, and he decided to leave and find another job. He also had a degree in computer engineering or computer science or something like that. I don't really remember. But he was really smart, but he couldn't, like, use his degree to get a job, so that's why he was working for Persephone, is because no one was hiring him and he needed a way to support his younger sister. And his parents were also abandoned them, pretty much. They were in France while they were there. And also his parents owned a bakery and he knew how to bake. I'm sorry, I'm so mad about the loss of Lawrence. Lawrence. I'm still so sad about it. Then Sonia was really fiery. She had a crush on Harold. That was a whole big plot line. She actually kissed Harold in the middle of the woods once. And Harold was like, what was that for? I don't like you at all. And then Sonia cries in a corner for, like, the rest of the book. It was so funny. Yeah, but Sonia was very sweet, but she was also very insane. So we have that. There was also going to be a plot point at some point where Sonia ended up working for Persephone in a later book, but since she was cut, it's not happening. So, yeah, they were some of my favorite characters in the draft. In both drafts. They are still very close to my heart, and I may reuse them in another book idea or, like, just tweak their characters a bit, like, because they were, like, really well developed, too. Like, they had character development. Even though they were both only side characters, they both had a lot of character development. And I have, like, a bunch of old scenes with them. You have no idea. So the reason I cut them from Masquerade, this is simply because there were way too many characters. There are a lot of characters, and I realize adding Lawrence and Sonia into the already stressful book might not make sense to the readers. And also, I actually wrote Lawrence in the beginning of Masquerade, this draft, but then I got to, like, part 2, and I realized I haven't mentioned him, so, like, he didn't really have a purpose. So I cut both Lawrence and Sonia out of that draft, and I'm still really sad about it. Yeah, it's really sad because they were also really good characters, had really good character development. Persephone also really, really liked Florence, and she actually part of the reason that she hired him was because he could speak French and teach her how to speak, and also because he looked a lot like Paul, and that was another reason why she hired him. But now, that's gone, so we can cry over the loss of Lawrence together. But Lawrence will probably come back in something. I don't know what. It could be later in the experiment series. It could be in another book entirely I end up writing sometime in the future. But Lawrence and Sonia, I feel like they'll come back. I feel like they will have a comeback. I've already done a bunch of character development on them. So I don't see the point of scrapping their characters completely. I'm just holding them in case like there's another story idea they may fit into, or even like have a main character thing and become main characters in a different story or something like that. So they're not gone forever. It's just from the experiment series they were cut, which is really sad. So next, this was a funny arc. I added this in for pure laughs. But this thing that was cut was basically the Servant Harold arc. You might all be looking at me like, what? So basically, Harold was kidnapped at some point in earlier drafts of Masquerade. I forget why. I'm pretty sure he was like an exchange for another character. It's a long story, but he was like an exchange, basically. And he's like, I'm not going to let this one person be hurt, so I'm going to take their place. And then Persephone basically made him a servant in her household. I'm not even joking. Like, she dressed him in a suit. She had him, like, go around and clean things. It was a very funny arc. And my friends like to call him Penguin Harold. At least one of my close friends at the time called him Penguin Harold. And I thought it was very funny. So, yeah, Penguin Harold was a thing. He wore a full-on suit and tie. Persephone was laughing at his demise. And so was everyone else, including me. So there's that. Another thing I cut from this draft. Like, this I kind of forgot about for a bit. But another thing I cut was... What was it? Oh my gosh. So Clover's father. Clover's father used to be a big part in earlier drafts. Like, yeah, so he used to be a big part in earlier drafts, and Nathan actually killed him in second draft of Masquerade because Persephone told him to, and he didn't really have a choice, but then Clover had this whole monologue about her story and stuff. Now, most of her story you don't get to find out till book 3, but she was... Like, there was literally a whole scene with Colby, Clover's father, Colby being there and then Nathan stabbing him and this whole big thing. I cut it because I just really didn't see the point of the theatrics, and also because you don't really get to find out much of Clover's story until book 3. So that's interesting. And I guess Clover's father, like, you know, I'm going to give you a tiny little spoiler here, but he's still part of the second book. Not as much as in earlier drafts, but he's still a part of the second book, and he still has a place in the second book. I can't tell you why. I can't tell you anything else, except that he does have a place there, and he may be important later on in the series, but we don't know yet, so yeah. And that's honestly all the cutscenes I can think of off the top of my head that really matter. If there's anything else that you're interested in, or if you have any other questions about this, let me know. Would love to answer them down in the comments. I want to thank you all so very much for watching and listening to me ramble, and I will see you in another video.